You know the story, right? You've got someone on your team who is an absolute rock star, just amazing at their job. Then they get promoted to manager, and it's a total disaster. It's something we see all the time. Well, today, we're diving into some incredible research by Dr. Roni Roodas that finally explains why this happens and uncovers the real reasons behind it.
It really is a huge workplace mystery, isn't it? Our very best people get promoted, and then they just seem to stumble. But here's the thing, it's not their fault, and it's definitely not just bad luck. What we're looking at is a systemic problem, and the research we're breaking down today gives us the tools to see exactly why it happens over and over again.
So, how do we get to the bottom of this? We're going to follow the evidence laid out by Dr. Roodas. First, we'll nail down the problem itself. Then, we'll dig into its root causes. After that, we'll look at 4 big systemic failures, explore a whole new way of thinking about accountability, and finally, lay out a real blueprint for how to build better leaders. Okay, so let's start with the heart of the issue. This isn't just about a few people having a tough time. We're talking about a deep, recurring cycle where organizations consistently, and yeah, often knowingly, put unprepared people into leadership roles. They're basically setting them and their teams up to fail.
And this right here, this is the vicious cycle in a nutshell. We take a brilliant software developer or a top salesperson, and we reward their technical skills with a management job. But that's a completely different skill set. So when they struggle, which is pretty predictable, we point the finger at them and say they failed, all while the broken system that created the problem in the first place just keeps on chugging along completely unexamined.
To really understand why this cycle is so persistent, the research goes way beyond just looking at the symptoms. It digs deep into the root causes. It actually uses 4 really powerful theories, kind of like different camera angles, to show us the problem from every possible side. And these theories are just so insightful. You've got the classic Peter principle, which says people get promoted right up to the job they can't do. Transformational leadership theory shows us why untrained leaders tend to just give orders instead of inspiring people. Leader-member exchange, or LMX, explains how they end up creating cliques, in-groups and out-groups. And finally, social learning theory shows that with no good mentors to look up to, new leaders just end up copying the bad habits they see around them. Put them all together, and you get a crystal clear picture of a system that's just broken. So, using these theories as a guide, the study asks the really critical questions, like why do we appoint unprepared people in the first place? What are the common, predictable mistakes they make? And this is the big one. How do we decide who to blame when things inevitably go south? Answering these questions is how we get from just complaining about the problem to actually finding a solution. Okay, so with that framework set, the research dove headfirst into the evidence. And by looking at 100 different sources, from academic journals to real-world business articles, a really clear and frankly disturbing pattern started to show up. The analysis found 4 major breakdowns that all feed into each other. First, there's a huge bias toward technical skill. We promote people for what they did, not for what they can do as a leader. This creates massive gaps in their training and development. That problem gets even worse because of weak or non-existent mentoring. And the final nail in the coffin? A toxic blame culture that just points the finger at the individual when the whole system let them down. I mean, this quote from the study just says it all, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the core injustice here. We get obsessed with the symptom, the struggling new manager, while we completely ignore the disease, the system that set them up for failure right from the very beginning. All right, so if the new leader isn't the only one at fault, who is? This is where the research really challenges us to completely rethink what we mean by responsibility. So the research contrasts 2 totally different ways of thinking. On the one hand, you have the default setting, the individual blame model. It's basically a scapegoat system. But the study pushes for something much smarter, a shared accountability model. This model gets that failure doesn't just happen in a vacuum, it's the product of the whole environment. And here's what that shared model looks like. You can see it's not all on the leader, not even close. The organization itself, the one that designed the broken system, holds the biggest piece of the pie. Then there's the manager who made the promotion decision. And yeah, of course, the individual leader has their share of responsibility too. But it's just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. Leadership failure is a shared problem, not a personal one. Okay, understanding the problem is one thing, but the real question is, how do we actually fix it? So let's get to the best part. The actionable steps we can take to break this cycle for good and finally start building the great leaders we need. This study gives us a super clear, practical blueprint. Stop promoting people just based on their old job performance and start actually assessing their potential to lead. Make leadership training mandatory, not just a nice-to-have perk. Build real, structured mentoring programs that give people guidance. And maybe most important of all, when a new leader struggles, use it as a chance to examine the system, not just to blame the person.
If you take only one thing away from our explainer today, let it be this. Bad leadership isn't just a string of unfortunate accidents. It is the logical, totally predictable result of a system that's designed, even if unintentionally, to produce it. A system that confuses being good at a task with being good at leading people. And that brings us to the final, really critical question that Dr. Roodas' work leaves us with. I want you to think about your own workplace, your own team, and ask yourself, honestly, are you promoting leaders or are you just promoting problems? The answer could be the first step to breaking this destructive cycle once and for all.